por tenernos aquí. Yo soy Oliver Zugel, soy cofundador de FolioMed. Aquí está mi compañero y amigo de toda la vida, Diego Felipe Navarro, que lo conocéis, me imagino. Y tenemos el placer, el honor hoy de estar con los hermanos Stanley, bien conocidos, siendo los fundadores de la empresa que a día de hoy es la marca número 1 a nivel mundial relacionado con el cannabis medicinal, una empresa que se llama Charlotte's Web. Yo me he encontrado con ellos hace muchos años en Las Vegas durante mi primer proyecto empresarial. Me he quedado entonces muy impresionado con la autenticidad, la vocación que tienen ellos en lo que se refiere a dar acceso a los pacientes, y de la amistad con ellos al final surgió una sociedad en conjunto que tenemos con ellos, donde nosotros comercializamos, FolioMed comercializa sus productos a nivel internacional con la marca Stanley Brothers. Y en el día de hoy, de lo que quiero hacer, que compartan con vosotros sus experiencias de qué es lo que ha funcionado en los mercados internacionales, qué es lo que no ha funcionado, y también un poco de la historia de ellos, que es de cómo han llegado ellos al cannabis medicinal, mientras que no, la gran mayoría de la gente en Estados Unidos están en el otro lado, que es decir, que en el mercado recreativo. Con lo cual, sin más, yo voy a hacerle una entrevista, voy a traducir, ¿no?, lo que nos dicen para que aquí todos lo podemos seguir. Y sin más palabras, entonces yo creo que la primera pregunta que tengo para ellos es de cómo surgió el nombre de Charlotte Web, que ha sido, ¿no?, su primera empresa. I think for starters, Jesse and John, thank you for coming. John just landed this morning at 5 o'clock at El Dorado Airport. He came in last night, so they're still looking quite fresh. Let's see whether that actually will play out that way. Probably for light starters, 2 questions to you. A, how did the name Charlotte's Web come up? How do you actually get there? And secondly, and probably more curiously, it's 7 brothers and 4 sisters, and all their names start with J. So this is John, it's Jesse. Give us the other 5.
First of all, I'm Jesse, and it's a pleasure to be here. First time in Colombia, so I'm super excited to be here just from that. I haven't seen a lot of the city, but it seems beautiful. I apologize for my Spanish. It's not very good, so hopefully you understand me and the translation's good. Thank you, Carlos and Jaime, for having us. It means a lot to be able to be here and tell our story. And Oliver and Diego as well, thank you. 1 of 11, 2 of 11, all J's, Josh, Joel, Jen, Joel, me, John, Jordan, Jared, Joy, Jay Austin, Julie, and Jensen. My brothers and I started Stanley Brothers in 2008, and we worked together. We're a very close family, come from a single mom. My dad left when we were young, when my sister, youngest sister, was born. So I think that created a sort of a camaraderie and a closeness amongst us. We work together, we play together, and we fight together. So I'll let you touch a little bit, and then we can get into Charlotte's story.
So I'll do the translation. We do the Charlotte. Son 11, ¿no? Al final vienen de una familia solamente de madre. Tienen son muy unidos entre ellos, y la verdad los conozco casi a todos, no a todos desafortunadamente, ¿no?, hasta la fecha, pero creo que ha creado, ¿no?, entre ellos un vínculo no muy cercano, de haber crecido y en el campo, la verdad. Eso es un poco el vínculo, lo vais a ver, ¿no?, que son de Colorado ellos, entonces con lo cual ahí con un upbringing, sí, más bien campestre que de otra forma, no son urbanos de naturaleza. John, over to you. Charlotte's Web.
Hi, everyone. Yes. Hello. I'm also very happy to be here. I love Colombia. Your country is amazing. We started growing cannabis, and we quickly got a following of cancer patients and people that were asking to treat with our oils. And so we got as scientific as we could at the time, and so that we didn't get, grandmothers and grandfathers stoned. And then we started to learn about CBD and started to get our hands on some genetics and do some breeding. And we basically just housed it. We didn't do anything with it. And until Charlotte's mother came to our brother Joel and asked if he would be willing to treat a 4-year-old girl. And he said, yeah, we'll do what we can. I mean, it wasn't that easy of a decision.
He said, yes, I remember the call. Let's do it. Let's go 2 mics and pass them back and forth. I think that's better, yeah. He's called each of us and said, hey, what do you think about giving cannabis to a little girl? Her name was Charlotte Figge. Some know the story. She had Dravet syndrome, which is a very rare form of epilepsy. She failed all pharmaceuticals, but he said, hey, what do you think about giving cannabis to this little girl? At the time, cannabis wasn't, it was gray area, not fully legal. It was legal in Colorado, but not in the federal landscape. And it was a tough question. Obviously the answer was yes, if it will help her, but it's also very dangerous. So I think the risk for her parents, definitely for the reward that they got out of it, it was definitely worth it.
Entonces, lo que muchos de vosotros conocéis la historia, ¿no? de la niña pequeña que se llama Charlotte Figge, que entonces tenía 4 años cuando se reunieron sus padres, Paige Figge y su marido, no venían del mundo de activismo de cannabis, ni mucho menos. Eran gente que no consumían cannabis, ni mucho menos, que el padre era militar, si no me equivoco, o por lo menos tenía un cargo oficial muy importante. Y cuando se acercaron y les pidieron a ellos y a su hermano Joel de intentar ayudar a la niña, la niña tenía un síndrome muy raro y complicado de Dravet y los farmacéuticos no le funcionaron bien. Para ellos fue una decisión complicada porque era algo lo que no se había hecho antes. Y quiero decir que medicar una niña de 4 años cuando el CBD en su momento todavía era muy numeroso y no hubo mucha genética con bajo nivel de THC, para ellos era un reto importante y una responsabilidad muy importante, ¿no? Y esto creo que es lo que quieren destacar.
And then, so she took it, what would soon be known as Charlotte's Web. She took it and she went a week free without a seizure. For the first time since she was 6 months old. And we, in the world of disease, there's a thing called a honeymoon phase where something might work for a little while and then it stops working. So our expectations, we wanted to make sure we had them set. And then she took it again another week and another week. And one of our next responders had 400 seizures a day, and was constantly seizing, and he took it and was seizure free up until, for 5 straight years. So once that happened, we started documenting it ourselves. We became excellent videographers and making videos and putting them on YouTube. And Sanjay Gupta from CNN found it. And then he did a big expose, which was called Weed. I'm sure many of you have seen it or heard about it. After that kind of set our story off. And that's whenever we changed the name to pay homage to the little girl that is the reason why we're all here. Charlotte Figge, so Charlotte's Web made the most sense. And overnight we had about a 15,000 person waiting list, people moving to Colorado to access this because we couldn't ship it at the time. And it is the story for why medical cannabis has progressed as far as it has in not just the United States, but all over the world.
Y entonces lo que contó es que al principio, ¿no? Los resultados para Charlotte eran muy impresionantes, pero que ellos lo estaban mirando con cautela, porque como los médicos en esta sala saben muy bien que en la aplicación de medicinas en principio no hay un periodo al principio donde las cosas pueden funcionar, pero luego dejan de funcionar. Entonces la primera semana la niña dejó de tener convulsiones, y en la segunda también, en la tercera también, en la cuarta también. Y era por primera vez en la vida de la niña desde que hace tenía 6 meses. Que para los padres era un acontecimiento absolutamente revolucionario. Luego se sumó un segundo paciente joven, igualmente con los mismos resultados que se dieron. Ese es el momento cuando ellos empezaron a documentar, ¿no? La evidencia, el progreso, la aplicación del CBD para este tipo de casos. Y empezaron en un momento donde la industria no estaba muy regulada. No nos equivoquemos, esto todavía era un espacio semi-regulado en su momento. Empezaron a publicar vídeos en YouTube. Sanjay Gupta de CNN, ¿no? De la cadena de televisión, lo encontró y se interesó por el caso. Hizo el documental que muchos de vosotros habéis visto, que se llama WIT, si no me equivoco. Era un documental muy bien hecho, científico, médico, pero a la vez, ¿no? Documentando el caso de Charlotte. Y eso es lo que ha dado un poco al nacimiento, creo, que del CBD y del uso terapéutico de la planta, ¿no? A nivel internacional. Para volver a la pregunta sobre por qué lo llamaron Charlotte's Web. Bueno, una cosa es obvio, que es el nombre de la niña, ¿no? Que ha sido lo que creo que ha sido el inicio del viaje. But apart from this, there's a book, if I'm not mistaken, a children's book called Charlotte's Web, where there's a pig,
Yeah.
which is going to be slaughtered, and the spider intervenes and makes sure that the pig doesn't die. So what was the link between Charlotte as a name and the Charlotte Web children's book?
So the link was, I mean, it's a beautiful story. Charlotte's Web, I think E.B. White, I think, wrote it. Favorite as a child, obviously very sad because Charlotte teaches Wilbur how to be special. Wilbur's going to be slaughtered. Charlotte the spider teaches him how to be special, and then she passes away, which is obviously very sad. But for us, it was a favorite. So with cannabis, spiders are our friends. They eat pests. In fact, I was deathly afraid of spiders until we started releasing them in our grows because they eat pests. So it just kind of made sense to call it Charlotte's Web because, I mean, after all, Charlotte created a web that has brought everybody together, and it's been infectious. And anybody that hears the story wants to learn more about it, which is, why we're here.
So hay un libro muy famoso, que uno de los más conocidos, que para niños, ¿no? Que se llama Charlotte's Web, que es la historia de que tiene lugar en un farm, ¿no? En el campo, con lo cual hay el vínculo también un poco con la familia, y donde hay un cerdito que está a punto que va a ser sacrificado, y interviene una araña que se llama Charlotte y al final consigue que este cerdito no va a ser sacrificado. La araña misma muere, y con lo cual es una historia de cierta tristeza, pero tiene muchos vínculos. Y con lo cual ahí nació, cuando os preguntáis, es un poco raro, ¿no? El nombre de una empresa que se llama Charlotte's Web. Viene de ahí, era la niña Charlotte, y a la vez yo creo que una historia muy emotiva, ¿no? Que se llama así. Entonces, having talked about the J's, the 12 J's, and the history of Charlotte's Web, and you can ask as many questions, we'll have 15 minutes afterwards to do that. Let's talk about why you're in Colombia, and rather, when did you come to Colombia for the first time? What's the relevance of this here? ¿Por qué han venido a Colombia ahora, y eso es algo nuevo para ellos, o qué vínculo tienen con el país?
I came to Colombia by myself in 2005, just traveling and trying to explore South America, and I was supposed to keep traveling to Venezuela and onward to Brazil, but I stayed in Medellin for 8 months, and I was actually deported because I was irresponsible with my visa, and back then there weren't a lot of us gringos walking around your country. So they gave me the boot, and I was in love. I knew Colombia was very special. And then when I came traveling back down, I traveled by van. Actually, I have a tattoo of my van right here. So I drove it down through Colombia, and Uruguay legalized cannabis, so we went there. The brothers and Charlotte's Web supported a grow down there, and it was very difficult. At the same time, we were finding Uruguay to be very difficult. Colombia legalized, so the brothers all decided that we should put our eyes on Colombia for its climate and its ability to grow cannabis at many different altitudes all year round. We saw it as a very big opportunity for the world. So came back here and started working at the opportunity, and well, here we are.
Entonces, el vínculo con Colombia ya va hasta el año 2005, la verdad, donde él estaba aquí, donde por problemas con su visa, luego al final le expulsaron temporalmente del país, luego volvió, por supuesto. Y él ¿no? tenía también, yo creo, su propio viaje personal que venía desde Sudamérica, desde Uruguay hasta ¿no? al final, yo creo que Ushuaia, si no me equivoco. Y creo que hay una conexión emocional con el país, por un lado, que está con los hermanos, pero también un interés económico. Ellos aterrizaron aquí en Colombia en primer lugar, compraron también una tierra en Antioquia, tenían una relación con la Universidad de Antioquia en su momento, y creo que desde entonces siempre han tenido la convicción del potencial del país, ¿no? Y esto finalmente ha resultado en la sociedad conjunta que tenemos nosotros con Folimed con ellos, donde nosotros somos su brazo ejecutor de alguna forma, ¿no? De la marca en este país y en los países internacionales. Y podéis ver ahí, ¿no? Es un vínculo histórico ya bastante largo. Question to you, Jesse. I think many people in this room have watched the sector in difficult times since 2017. 2017, the expectations were very high. I think the aspirations were high. There was a lot of money flowing into the country for sponsoring the medical cannabis sector, and things have not turned out in the way that many people expected. And there's a lot of disappointment. There was a lot of money wasted. The sector has not evolved, I think, to a stage where the medical access for patients here in Colombia is sufficiently well regulated. What's your perspective on this, and how do you compare it with evolutions of the sector in other countries? Is this just we're doing something wrong here in Colombia, or what's going on when you compare it to what you have seen elsewhere in the world?
Yeah, it's no different than other places. Some places it goes fast, and other places it's much, much slower. I think that the expectation was to make a lot of money and to help a bunch of people and all of these things. And, as I told Oliver earlier, we were talking about it, they didn't land people on the moon the first time. There's a lot of money wasted figuring out how to do something, and that's just business in and of itself. Nobody gets it perfect. We certainly did not get it perfect the first time. We've been successful, but I didn't have a lot of these gray hairs in my beard, and him as well. So, it comes with stress and mistakes. So I would say, as long as you're progressing, you're moving forward. But if your expectations for for a plant that's been demonized for a long time is that you're just going to make it straight out of the gate, because yes, it does help people. We know that. And yes, some people have made money doing it. But it's not just a recipe for success.
Sí, él sí piensa que de lo que estamos viendo aquí en Colombia no es tan disimilar a lo que él ha visto en otros países. Quiere decir que empezar a comercializar una planta que ha sido prohibida durante siglos no es una tarea fácil que se hace en 2 días. Y el ejemplo que él da dice que tampoco los americanos ni los rusos han llegado a la luna de primera vez. Quiere decir que el sacrificio de que han hecho muchísimos empresarios estando en el sector es para el bien mayor. Es casi un sacrificio necesario para poder avanzar a una meta que es difícil. Y con lo cual, claro, para los individuos que aquí han puesto su ánimo, sus ahorros y su patrimonio y su ilusión, es duro de ver de cómo evolucionar este sector. Ha sido más difícil probablemente lo esperado, pero eso es un sacrificio creo que para el avance, ¿no?, del cannabis medicinal en su generalidad. Y es lo que él dice, ¿no? Dice que hoy día ya tiene pelos en la barba, que dices que no lo tenía antes. Para ellos tampoco no creáis que ha sido un viaje simplón, ni mucho menos. Ha sido un viaje económicamente con muchísimos retos, con muchas idas y vueltas. Quiere decir que si sirve de consuelo, la verdad es la historia de la evolución, incluso de ellos, no ha sido nada fácil, ¿no? Es como el sector es así, cuando estás entrando en un sector pequeño al principio, es lo que pasa.
And to add, I think with it, because of the demonization of the plant, even though it's been used for thousands of years as medicine, it takes a long time to learn something. Look at me, I've been going to Costa Rica and other places, and my Spanish is terrible. You'd think I'd learn by now. Sometimes it just takes time. You have to educate people. And that education is not just us in this room. It's not just our youth. It's the doctors. This plant has been, not been able to be researched. So the education for doctors is just starting to catch up. And when it comes to your health, the person we trust the most is doctors, not politicians, not people that are making the laws. It's doctors. So these are the things that are catching up. So that's where, you sprint, you get a little tired, you have to walk for a bit, and then you sprint again. And then if the life is a marathon, that's how it goes. Not everybody is patient enough just to run at a steady pace. That's kind of where the industry is at. So as long as we're progressing, I think Colombia will be totally fine.
Sí, reforzando el punto que no es un viaje lineal, es un viaje donde haces 2 pasos adelante, 3 atrás, 1 delante, 1 atrás. Eso es lo que pasa porque obviamente la educación de medios, reguladores y médicos no es algo lo que se hace en 2 días, ¿no? Y la verdad, para estar en la industria al final hay que estar también por las razones correctas, ¿no? Que para ayudar a los pacientes. Y esto creo que le da a la gente a la pasión. Y todo el mundo puede hacer maratones. Que sé que hay mucha gente que no están para maratones y quieren funcionar mejor en la distancia corta, ¿no? De alguna forma. Pero creo que esto es lo que él ahí quiere transmitir. Another question for you. When Colombia was regulated 2017, I think the fundamental assumption was for this to be an export-oriented market, which could perfectly evolve without having a domestic market. I think that was kind of the theory of the case at that point in time. To what extent you think that model has contributed to some of the challenges which we are seeing today?
I think, massively. So, from my understanding and history of Colombia, you export coffee and flowers and a bunch of other things. The climate here is absolutely perfect for cannabis because it is a flower. The cost of good is lower, so there's opportunity massively for Colombia to not only be the largest exporter of medicinal cannabis, but to be proud of that as well. I think the difficult thing on the domestic side and availability is sometimes with regulation or no regulation, it becomes very difficult for access to patients here. And if it's too regulated, then it's unaffordable because you had to jump through all these hoops and people need to operate in a certain way and then people can't afford it. If it's not regulated, then the quality maybe isn't as good. So it is a fine line. I think in Colorado, when we legalized, it happened in 2012, and it honestly didn't hit perfection until a couple years ago. Teen use is down, drunk driving is down, the fatalities are down, crime is down, all of the things that people didn't expect happened, but it took time to regulate it and get it right. And like anything, it just takes time. And I think Colombia has two opportunities domestically to make something available for its people for health, whether it's CBD or high THC for pain, and also to export something to the world that is high grade, high quality, standardized, and it's something that can be, in 10, 15 years, we'll look back and be like, we'll be very proud of this. And it is something to be proud of. We just need to get there on the education front.
So, lo que yo le preguntaba hasta qué punto, ¿no? Que la tesis inicial del 2017 de hacer un mercado de exportación sin tener regulado bien el mercado doméstico, si esto era válido o no. Y yo creo que lo que él está diciendo que sí es necesario, sin duda ninguna, con las ventajas que tiene el país, de que tengas algo de mercado doméstico, porque al final, ¿cómo vas a exportar a un mercado muy sofisticado como sería Alemania o Australia si no has podido aprender en casa? Yo creo que es muy difícil de competir a nivel internacional, ¿no? De alguna forma, sin tener una base de evolución que puedes comprobar en casa. Y creo que su observación es, cuando la regulación es muy restrictiva, como sigue siéndola aquí en términos de acceso, ¿no? de cannabis medicinal, el producto resulta muy caro, con lo cual ya tienes otro problema, ¿no? que se te pone ahí en el medio. Question for you, Jesse. But when you look at the regulations here, and the fact that not even kind of CBD oil can be prescribed quite easily without going through a whole pharmaceutical process. You do not have flower as a medical prescription product, which is the key product which we are seeing in Australia and in Germany. Prescription-based, limited indication, not widespread use. What's your take on it when you look at it from a patient basis? So the access, what does it mean for a patient to not have access to these type of medicines at this point?
Yeah, a couple thoughts on that, and then I know John has a story probably for access from a friend standpoint. Humans we're stubborn, and we use certain things in certain ways. Tobacco, good example. Like, science has been around and bioavailability has been around for a long time, but vaping's relatively new and thin things and stuff. They smoke it. It's just something that happens. Cannabis is meant to, from a standpoint of bioavailability, is what people have done for a long time is smoke it because it happens instantaneously and you feel it. And if you have severe pain or a migraine coming on, you can't wait 45 minutes for something to go through your stomach. So it's a bioavailability thing, one, that I think needs to be cracked. I'm not a doctor and I'm not a researcher. I'm not going to be a big proponent of smoking. But that being said, heat, not vape, there's all kinds of other things out there. We need to be working on, the bioavailability of this, but I don't believe that smoking cannabis is ever going to go away. I mean, in the United States, it's been legal in some places for over 10 years, and it is the number one use of how people use it because that's what they're used to. And they don't break those habits easy, and they don't want to wait for a pill to go through their stomach, and then they feel it for 4 hours as opposed to feeling it for an hour, and they're able to dose themselves correctly. So that's my thought. I think the world speaks the same way. I think everybody uses cannabis in a similar way. And I think that science and new products will come, and they are coming.
Entonces lo que dice que podemos argumentar desde un punto de vista medicinal sobre los beneficios de inhalar cannabis, pero la realidad es que muchos pacientes, dejando aparte el uso adulto, ¿no?, que han utilizado y están utilizando el cannabis de esta forma por su biodisponibilidad inmediata y sobre todo para condiciones como cáncer, múltiple esclerosis y otros, ¿no? Y ignorar este beneficio, ¿no?, que él opina, sí te priva al paciente de un acceso a una de las formas de administración, que es solamente una más. Obviamente la de soluciones orales es la más común también ahora en este país, pero él sí piensa que tener este acceso limitado, ¿no?, es una restricción importante para los pacientes, que es decir, que los pacientes que lo necesitan y lo que ellos ven, ¿no?, que actúen de esta forma en otros mercados. So Jesse, yes, John, you wanted to say something?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to add back on the last question that I hope that regulators and market leaders really take, the local industry very seriously and treat it with respect. Where I just remember going to the coffee plantations, and the beans that would float, the crappy beans, are the ones that stayed in Colombia, and all the good ones got sent out. And I just hope that in cannabis that's never the case. There's plenty of people here that need really high quality cannabis, and I hope that it is very accessible for them here.
No, lo que él dice, lo que es su esperanza, que la calidad de producto, que no pase lo que él percibe. Yo del café no sé nada, la verdad, pero lo que él percibe que está con el café, que el producto bueno sale del país para exportación, lo malo se queda aquí. Eso es lo que pasa con cannabis desde Canadá, que los canadienses exportan la flor no tan buena a otros lugares y se consumen la otra por allá. Entonces, él piensa que hay un producto de mucha calidad y nosotros lo podemos con total contundencia reafirmar. Nosotros no hemos hecho el primer shipment ahora de flor a Australia. Vamos a tener casi 150 kilos con marca Stanley en el mercado en Australia. Y el feedback de lo que estamos recibiendo de la gente es espectacular. Es decir, que no han visto un producto de esta calidad veniendo hacia su país desde Canadá. Es una diferencia abismal de lo que se está viendo. Y lo vais a ver, esto va a decir de esta forma, que es la tesis de aquí en este país se puede hacer un producto medicinal de mayor calidad. Yo creo que está claramente reafirmándole y yo creo que es también su vocación. Final question before we do question and answers for you. What advice would you give to patients and doctors to get their voices heard, right? What can they do to actually spread the news and somehow achieve what, through the coincidence of Charlotte and the CNN story, was achieved in the United States and went to other countries? What, if you have any advice or recommendation you would give to the group of how they can spread the news, would there be any?
I think success stories. I think talking about your story. We're in a day and age now where you can talk about your cannabis use and not have to hide it. Spread stories like Charlotte's story, I think, is very important. There are other success stories that are similar in each country, because I'm naive in thinking that everybody knows Charlotte's story, because it's like, what, this little girl had 300 seizures and then cannabis stopped them? Not everybody knows that story. That's a powerful story. And if the more people that know that, the more people investigate it. So for me, like when I hear something, then my biggest friend is Google. So I'm going to Google this and make sure it's right? So to me, that's one. And then for doctors, the same way. Like, try to push if there are doctors in the room, I know there's some, try to push the universities to teach the endocannabinoid system. I mean, it's the largest cell receptor system in our body, relatively new discovery, and it's still not being taught in mainstream education for doctors in the United States. So we just need to continue to push for more research in that system, the endocannabinoid system, but then also read all the research that's out there. There's tons of it. It's available. It's on PubMed. It's like, we didn't solve epilepsy with CBD. Like, there's research going back from Brazil from the 90s of this. This is not new. We just made it popular with Charlotte's story. So the information's out there. So talk about it, spread about it, talk it amongst people. Like, it doesn't always have to be the devil's lettuce, or even the word weed is a kind of a negative connotation. Cannabis is a beautiful, powerful, magnificent plant. There's 25,000 uses for it, and it works in our bodies symbiotically with us because we have an endocannabinoid system and it has cannabinoids. So even talking about those things is pretty, I mean, science is cool. So sorry, that's a lot to translate, but
Bueno, yo intento de memorizar un poco lo que él ha dicho. Yo creo que varios puntos. Charlotte Figi no es el único paciente, ni mucho menos, que se ha beneficiado de los efectos de cannabis, y en Colombia los hay. Y creo que las historias de los pacientes aquí en Colombia, en Panamá, en otros países, tienen que ser contados. Y esto sí va a atraer atención mediática, porque son, la verdad, historias que conmueven mucho, como podéis ver hoy, ¿no?, con la historia de Charlotte. Pero Charlotte está en Colorado. Pero hay muchas Charlottes aquí en este país, muchas, que no se beneficiarían para el bien de todos los demás pacientes, que su historia sería contada. Y ahí los médicos sí tienen un rol muy importante de poder de alguna forma diseminar, ¿no?, la información al respecto. Lo otro, lo que dijo, y ese es el camino corto. El camino corto, yo creo que tiene que haber atención mediática sobre casos muy llamativos, que las hay. El otro camino más largo es obviamente la educación que tiene que tener lugar en las universidades, y esto hay que impulsar y empujar, y esto no es el camino largo. Ese camino no se hace en 2 días, ¿no?, de alguna forma. Pero el hecho de contar la historia y la necesidad en base a casos muy, muy llamativos, ¿no?, de pacientes, como fue en su momento Charlotte Figi, y de los cuales hay muchos en todos los países, hay una multitud de ellos. Yo creo que es una de las recomendaciones de lo que él haría para que efectivamente esto no se convierta en un discurso entre nosotros. Es como, entre nosotros no podemos convencer todo de esto, pero que al final es la opinión pública que tiene que llegar que esta planta no tiene este tipo de efectos terapéuticos positivos. Con eso, si queréis, abrimos, sí, para la primera pregunta. Muchísimas gracias.